Greetings once again. I'm John Gabriel, and this is the new Calculus channel. So, today I want to dwell again on some old musings. I think, for example, of my experiences when I was very young, and I'll tell you a little anecdote before I start to recall a lesson that I'd given my father on fractions. So my father was not really a very nice man, and that's saying it nicely. I remember the first time when I was about 5 years old, he told me in Greek, "Ποιος εσύ ρε, είσαι σκατόπεδο, σε κατούρισα." Now, that was so stunning to me the first few times I heard it, that I had no response. So, but what it really means is, who are you, you little scoundrel? I urinated you out, meaning that, a reference to the sexual act. And much later, I told him that my right eye is really troubling me, as you can see. Much later, I told him that all he was doing was satisfying his carnal lusts, and that only half of only half of me was his. This used to hurt me a lot in past years, but I think I've reached a point now where I can look back and laugh at it. Although, to be honest, it's not something you would tell a young child. So anyway, I remember also when we fled the civil war in the Sudan, and we had arrived in Athens, and well, the beginnings of the civil war, at least. We had arrived in Athens, and we were going to board a ferry to the island of Lesbos. And because, little children emulate their fathers, I shouted at the Greek sailors very disrespectfully. I said to them, "Δουλέψτε, keratades, δουλέψτε." That means, work, you horned devils, or you cuckolds, work. And I would tell them that I was in a hurry and I wanted to leave to the island. Of course, I should have been given a proper spanking at the time, but I was just emulating my father. Well, it turns out that many years, well, not that long after, but several years later, my father needed to get a promotion at work because he was initially a motor technician, and he had to be able to work with fractions and percentages. And so now I'm going to give you a little lesson, the same lesson I gave to my father when I was about, I think, 8 or 9 years old. So let's begin. Now, so what is a percentage? He asked me. And, of course, my father used to speak to me in Greek, even though his ethnic background is over 50% Jewish, a certain amount Sardinian or Italian, and the rest Greek. So he had some Greek DNA too, I'm sure. And in any case, so he would tell me, well, I would tell him in Greek, percentage is an amount or a ratio. That's what this means in Greek, an amount or a ratio or a proportion. It's a fraction. That's what I tried to explain to him. That's all it is. It's a fraction. And in fact, a percentage is simply a way of expressing a given fraction with a different denomination. So, for example, a half is equal to 50 over 100. And that means we measure the size, called 1/2, the magnitude, called 1/2. Yeah, because a number is a name given to a measure that describes a magnitude. So we measure the size, called 1/2, using 100 equal parts instead of 2 equal parts, right, of the unit. And of course, when physical units are absent, always the abstract unit is assumed. Now, it doesn't matter what is the abstract unit, the measure of the abstract unit. Now, with physical units added to the dimensionless numbers a half, with physical units added to the dimensional numbers a half and 50, these quantities are no longer equal, okay, because 1 meter is not equal to a kilometer. In mathematics, the proportions are dimensionless because the abstract unit is used and its actual measure is irrelevant. There is no such thing as a divine unit, okay? So, very quickly, this here is, okay, and because the camera reverses everything, you'll see it reversed, but at any rate, this here is a straight edge or a ruler, and you'll see that I think this here is measured in inches, but that's just a physical unit, okay? It's got nothing to do with the abstract unit. An abstract unit is, its measure doesn't matter. So you'll see on videos in YouTube where they go on about, you know, there being no perfect unit or God unit. It doesn't matter. There doesn't need to be, okay? Because they're so unbelievably stupid. They've never really understood the elements of Euclid or what he was attempting to do. So what the whole process boiled down to is my father had to know how to calculate 15%, let's say, of $60 or whatever the currency was at that time. And this means a proportion as follows, okay? So a proportion is, by the way, how algebra starts. Now, 15% means 15 over 100, yeah? It's a proportion. And if we want to know what it is in terms of 60 equal units, then what we need to do is find the numerator, right? So if you look at this, I'm sorry, it's not that one. It's this one here. So if you look at this diagram here, and of course I've written this in Greek, but this means numerator and denominator. What you're trying to do is find how many of 100 equal parts will be the same as P of Q denominations. All right? That's all that you're doing when you're finding the proportion. So all it's saying is, how would you measure 15 hundredths if you used a unit that is divided into 60 equal parts? It doesn't matter what the size of the unit is as long as it's 60 equal parts. So the numerator is always the part that counts the denominations. Okay, that's why it's called a numerator, because it enumerates the number of denominations. So that's the little story I wanted to tell you. I know that this is nothing spectacular or profound, but this is one of the interesting stories on my journey in mathematics when I was very young, and also tells you a little bit about myself and how I grew up and what I've experienced. And so anyway, I decided to share that with you. I hope you enjoyed this little diversion, and I'll try to make musings, the next musings video, whenever I make it, a little more interesting. So I wish you all well. Stay safe. This is John Gabriel, the New Calculus channel. Till next time, goodbye.